Welcome, everybody. This is the February 18th, 2025, 2 p.m. legislative session of the Board of County Commissioners. Please let the record reflect that Commissioners Jordan, Waldrop, French, and Kearns are present in the hearing room. Commissioner Cuney is out today, so I will ask all of you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and we did receive written comment, but those were just on our hearing items. And just to note, we do have 3 public hearing items that we will get to. So we will begin with open public forum. I have a number of folks who have signed up. We will start with the first one in line here, which is Michael Morrow. So you please come up, state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes, and we'll have Ron cue that up in the timer for you there on the screen.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Michael Stephen Morrow. I live at 12909 East Gibbs Road, Micah, Washington. The rules of decorum are applicable to all meetings. In item 7 state, a speaker asserting a statement of fact may be asked to document and identify the source of the factual datum asserted. You cannot in Spokane County stop people from coming up in here and lying to you. But you can ask them to assert facts by providing evidence. But when the commissioner takes the false, misleading statement and then echoes it, then the commissioner's responsibility is to provide the facts that they're echoing from a testimony. Spokane County Parks and Recreation, in concert with Spokane Building and Planning Department and the Board of Commissioners, have colluded to refuse disabled combat veterans equal access under the law to Fish Lake, with the goal to unlawfully landlock private property, parcel number 23051.9005, and render it worthless to the disabled landowner. I've discussed the rules of decorum. Everything I've said has evidence, as provided, with photos. Commissioner Kearns stated decisions are made in the best interest of the community, but doesn't specify what community. The Commissioner's decisions are not in the best interest of the military community, from Fairchild Air Force Base, the VA Medical Center, or the local veterans of foreign wars. Their decisions are not in the best interest of the disabled community suffering from cognitive and physical disabilities. So please state with specificity exactly what community is best being served. I and other owners of private property on the shoreline of Fish Lake in Cheney, Washington, are being arbitrarily and capriciously targeted by Spokane County public officials because we are disabled or have disabled family and friends who desire family-centered peer-to-peer recreational therapy opportunities on Fish Lake. I'm a 100% disabled combat veteran. I have 2 sons who are both disabled, along with a 92-year-old grandmother in a wheelchair. I have friends who are also 100% disabled combat veterans. Under federal law, Fish Lake Regional Park had to update their public park to meet ADA standards when they programmed a major renovation in the entire park. They did not. The board denied disabled combat veterans easement access to the private property on the shoreline. Commissioner French falsely stated that these disabled persons had ample access to their property docks and boats via the Fish Lake Regional Park boat launch, knowing full well the boat launch is not ADA accessible. So there was 0 accessibility when he made that statement. Board denied disabled combat veterans easement access to the private property on the shoreline, stating potential harm to conservation and management of wildlife. A certified wetland study, JARPA and SEPA, costing over $4,000 from the city and the county's own riparian ecologist said that was not true. I guess that Commissioner French knows better than a certified scientist. I have photos provided for all the alleged damage that the multitude of people stood here and said that I did, and proof and evidence I did not. The owner of the other easement is right here. He has the exact same easement I requested. No damage to wildlife, no damage to roads, nothing else. So I guess that's not right. In addition to blocking access to the disabled vets, there's a not vacated road. And I'd like you to know I am seizing the land that the county has allowed my neighbor to seize also, and the sheriff is aware of it. So if you want to criminally trespass me, criminally trespass me.
Next up is William Hanson, Jr. Again, if you state your name and address for the record, we'll queue up 3 minutes for you.
All right, it's William D. Hanson, Jr. I live at 15105 South Cheney Spokane Road. I am the property owner on the north side of this county access road that Mr. Morrow is speaking about. and I have the before-mentioned legal easement that has been discussed. I emailed each of you already on 31 January. However, I feel that this issue warrants taking time off of my work to support Mr. Morrow. Quite simply, you have been bamboozled. I have game camera evidence that the public comments presented during the 28 January public comment were part of an orchestrated smear campaign against Mr. Morrow and his long-term plans. I can verify that I did not see one public speaker on it, with the sole exception of Ms. Kraus escorting a couple groups of people, none of which those people spoke publicly. With that, those testimonies at a minimum were regurgitated comments fed to the speakers by my neighbors to the south or based off of unverified photos provided to them. Definitely not firsthand, because they did not come down that road, which is the only way to evaluate the property condition that they spoke of. Furthermore, Mr. Morrow has not removed trees or impacted the wildlife activity, as the previous property owner stated and alluded to. With respect to the illegal gate my neighbor constructed trying to dictate who can access the public right-of-way road, I had to create my own access point to utilize my legal easement because of their unlawful efforts. Furthermore, Mr. Morrow accessing his property is no different than the other properties to the north that drive along the park lake shore to get to their properties. I would ask that you read the reports Mr. Morrow submitted so you can see that he has a documented plan that is environmentally responsible and soundly based on expert recommendations. In closing, Mr. Morrow deserves to have unlimited access to his property just like any other property owner at Fish Lake, not seasonally as dictated by park hours or an illegal gate that the owner refuses to remove as directed by the county. And I know in a position of authority, you make your decision, nobody wants to turn back, but I please ask you reconsider his easement request and you grant his easement so he can enjoy his property like everybody else does on Fish Lake. Thank you for your time. Have a good day.
Thank you. Next up, I think this is Edwin Andrews. So same thing, if you could state your name and address for the record, and we'll
Yeah.
get 3 minutes queued up.
I'm Edwin L. Andrews II. I go by Larry. Everybody calls me Larry, but I wanted to be legally. My address is 1503 East Wabash. We've lived there probably 40 years anyway. And I have a business in Spokane in the Hilliard neighborhood at 2727 North Medelia, Unit 8. We've been there since almost '89, okay? I'm here to talk to you. I'm also on a TAG committee member for the Commercial Energy Code. And last Friday, there was 2 of us that put proposals forward to the Energy Code to make 2066 equal with the law. And both of those proposals were refused by the West Side TAG members. And I don't see, as a TAG member for gas, that I don't see there's a way to, with the proposals that are in front of us left, even though we have like 93 of them, I don't see that there's a way to make equity between 2066 and the Washington State Energy Code, because the proposals were refused. Now, we have a few other proposals that can do partial equity, but not total equity. And if you look at the RCWs, the RCW is really clear that you can't influence gas anyway with electricity, okay? It's perfectly clear. The City of the Valley last week just approved 2066 as being the law, and they're going to equally treat gas as electricity. And many jurisdictions are doing that. The Washington State Building Code is in a stall tactic, and they're trying to stall this from happening. And it's not right, because in our district, Greg from Avista, he showed that all the gas, all the energy for the new homes is being developed by gas right now. So your carbon footprint is double than what it would be with natural gas, because the electricity has to be made from either coal or natural gas right now. All this new building that we're doing, and they're putting all this electric in, it's all having to be generated from coal or natural gas. And so you have a 95% piece of gas equipment that generates the heat at 95%, but you have electric there that it's got to go through cogeneration and line loss. You're lucky to be 40% efficient with your electricity right now, okay? And I would encourage you to move like the city of the valley and put forth natural gas as equal to heat pumps in this state. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Becky Dickerhoof.
Becky Dickerhoof, City of Spokane. The National Alliance to End Homelessness recently updated the report on the state of housing in our nation. They noted that as the gap between increasing housing costs and stagnant incomes widens, the end result is that more people become homeless. While the 2024 point-in-time count concluded that the number of unsheltered in Spokane is declining, it should also be noted that costs in the Spokane region for basic necessities are dramatically rising, which might mean the numbers may well increase in the future. From the National Alliance to End Homelessness, the nation is currently facing one of the most severe affordable housing crises in history. Not surprisingly, those living in poverty are the most significantly affected. In the 1970s, communities had plenty of affordable housing. That meant that when a family or individual experienced a crisis and lost housing, they could quickly find another place to live. But by the 1980s, the supply of low-cost housing had shrunk significantly. Since then, rents have continued to rise, and lower-income people in particular have experienced slow or stagnant wage growth. Today, 11 million extremely low-income households pay at least half of their income toward housing, putting them at risk of housing instability and homelessness. The solution to homelessness is straightforward: housing. By connecting people experiencing homelessness to housing and services, they have a platform from which they can address other areas that may have contributed to their homelessness, such as employment, health, and substance abuse. While both public housing and housing vouchers have proved to end homelessness, only 1 in 4 households that are eligible for such assistance receive it due to lack of funding. In many places across America, there is simply not enough available affordable housing. Without this housing stock, many homeless Americans are likely to continue to cycle in and out of homelessness. The priority now must be to expand the supply of affordable housing. In 2024, the funding for assistance from HUD ran out. Concerns are rising that the funding for HUD will continue to be tenable. It is becoming more apparent that the Spokane community must look elsewhere to solve the housing and homeless crisis. Thank you.
And Becky, was this one from you?
Yes,
that's Okay.
where this comes from.
Yep.
This document.
Thank you. Okay, next up, sorry if I get this name right. Is this Gary Mazingal? Okay, yep.
My name's Matthew Gary Massengale Sr. I live at 30 East Graves, Spokane, Washington, one of the most uninhabitable, unsafe living places in Spokane. 2018, Spokane Police Department allowed my landlord to an unlawful eviction, which cost me and 5 other people homeless. I was forced to take in a professional cage wrestler and a person eluding police officers and holding 2 women at will as roommates. When the police officer came out, he said it was a civil matter. Great. You cannot go into our courthouse and get a pamphlet to sue it. You will not find an attorney in this place. I now live because the SSVF got me an apartment. I've got 30 years homeless in this town. I've watched it from 74. My stepfather built IMX there. My mother's 86 years old. I am her last son, and I've been fighting my landlord for a year. They've sabotaged my car. I've got an attorney from Justice Program, and they've got my case on hold. An inspector cannot come into a rental unit and inspect the inside of our property. What's his name, Mark, the senior inspector? He cannot come in. They can only inspect the outside of a unit and the common areas. The fire inspector, chief fire inspector, cannot come in a renter's unit and inspect it. The only one that can ask for an inspection is the tenant himself, and they can only inspect what I asked for. Months ago, February, you don't need to build more houses. Take the credit score away, open them up. I pay $80 a time to rent a house, and I get denied. You look on Facebook, $400 for a 3-bedroom house. Us poor people are slamming out applications. I've got an insider trading report. I have complained to the Internal Affairs is not allowed to investigate a police officer after 1 year per contract of the city. I've talked to every news company. I have talked to everybody. I have made complaints with the FBI. I am writing a complaint against, Jennifer Spinoza, Housing Placement, SHA, Kelly Keenan, her boss, Josh Hodges. Why? He's the inspector who came out. They did it. Then they canceled my inspection. They won't they will not certify my unit. 8 people ended up homeless, 120 of them homeless. One woman is homeless, and she's got an autistic son, and they sit there, and it's allowed. I've written and requested. My civil rights have been denied. All of them have, because I've asked for an inspection from somebody that knows how to do an inspection. Is it safe? My hot water heater leaked for 8 months on top of my head with the electric. My trust, I've got pictures. I've got all the complaints to the FBI, all the complaints to HUD. I wrote a demand letter to the city. They write me out and say, oh, we can't investigate a police officer. 5 people homeless. Since 2018, 3 people have died unnecessarily. 8 people have been homeless. Camp Hope was built. They chased everybody off of the river, and they left them downtown, and then they made it where it is not a arrestable offense to do methamphetamine. They asked for police officers. They asked for jail.
Thank you, sir.
350 Michigan police officers, 250 sheriffs. Where are they?
Okay, that brings us to the end of our open public forum. So that will lead us to the rest of our agenda. I'm open to a motion on item number 3 and all sub-items.
Mr. Vice Chair, I would move.
I'm sorry. Oh, I apologize. Oh. Did you sign up for one of the public hearing items? Are you Amora? Yep. We're not there yet. This was just open public forum. So, okay. All right. So open to a motion.
Mr. Vice Chair, I would move that we approve item 3 and all the sub-items appearing thereunder from 3A to 3J.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 3A through J. Any comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes 4-0. That will bring us to our public hearing items. So we will begin with item 4A. And then it looks like we have a presentation from Deborah Fergens. And I will also state for the record, we did receive emails in support of these from Ryan Reynolds, Jennifer Lutz, and Jack English.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Considering revising the Spokane County Code, Section 7.40.120H, to require franchisees to remove redundant utility poles in Spokane County right-of-way. We have recently become aware of a problem with cable companies, telecommunication providers, and other utilities whose facilities reside on public utility poles. When a new utility pole is placed, can you put another slide up, please? Thank you. When a new utility pole is placed within the road right-of-way, various utilities are not transferring their facilities to new poles in a timely manner, causing old defunct poles to remain in place. Multiple poles in the same location are not aesthetically pleasing. They can be a public hazard, causing a reduction in space for sidewalks and drainage and traffic. This year, any new or revised franchise has had this same language that we're proposing in it to make it mandatory that they move to the new poles. We wish to codify this language to the county code. And as you can see in this picture, you can see that they've left the head of the utility pole still there with those wires attached to it, but the new pole was put on there. Next slide. And you can see here there's 2 poles in the same place, making it the sidewalk more encumbered there. Next. And the same thing here, you can see that we've got 2 poles in the same place where there should only be 1. And so this is what we are requesting for a code change.
Any questions for Deborah? Okay, well, this is a public hearing item, so getting feedback on that one. Anybody wishing to testify on item 4A, please come forward.
I'm Aiden Franklin. I live at 1319 East Blackwood Lane on Spokane South Hill. And up on top of the South Hill for several years was a redundant power pole right near High Drive and Grand. And even if we put this legislation forward and it passes, will there be any kind of enforcement of this, like a fine put on these utility companies to remove their redundant poles, or would the county have to go in and pay out of the taxpayer dollars to remove them?
Have Deborah come back to the microphone.
The county code that we've requested to have enlisted will allow the county engineer to, when we go through and inspect, because we get permits for those poles to be removed from there, and we go out and have our inspectors go out to view them. And when they find that the pole hasn't moved yet, we're going to, after a month, the county can, at the county not county commissioners, as at the county engineer's behest, start fining them for an inspection fee.
All right, anyone else wishing to testify on item 4A? Oh, and come on up. Yeah.
What I'd wonder is if you talk to the utilities about why they're not pulling the poles. Okay, because you put another pole right there, and when you pull that other pole, you've made less structural dirt around where the new pole is. And a better way might be just chopping the pole off at the ground rather than yanking that pole, because then you're gonna have to fill it, compact it, and ensure that that soil is really tight. Otherwise, you could compromise your other pole. And I think you should reach out to the utilities and get a recommendation from them why they might not be pulling these poles because of that. Thank you.
I'll ask Deborah, can you speak to that? And I will state that we did receive communication from both Avista and Inland Power in their support of the ordinance. But Deborah, could you speak to that?
Yeah, Avista had reached out to us that this was a major problem for them because they could not remove the pole that had existed in order to place the new pole because of the other utilities on that wire and stuff. So in them removing it completely or chopping it down at the ground, that is at the utilities and the county engineers talking about that, whether or not the county engineer would allow them to leave it in place or whether they find that it is not safe and stuff. So there is a discussion between the county engineer and the utility on whether or not a pole can be left in place, whether it's cut down or not within the county road right-of-way. And it's at the behest of the county engineer and the request of the Avista or Inland Powered Light. Sorry.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to testify on item 4A? Second call. Anybody online? Third and final call. Seeing no one else wishing to testify on item 4A, I will close the public hearing. And I will look to my fellow commissioners for a motion.
Mr. Vice Chair, I would move that we accept the recommendation from staff in considering and approving the revising of Spokane County Code Section 7.40.120, paren H, paren, to require franchisees to remove redundant utility poles in county right-of-way for Spokane County Public Works Department.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any final comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. That will bring us to public hearing item number 4B and another presentation from Deborah.
I'm back again, and this time the county code that we're changing is Spokane County Code Section 9.55.040D. This county code takes care of the rest of the utilities. The previous one was just for cable television, and so this will take care of all the rest of the utilities, and the same of what I said before.
All right, so again, this is a public hearing, so anybody wishing to testify on item 4B, please come forward. Second call. Anyone online? Third and final call. Seeing no one wishing to testify, we'll close the hearing on item number 4B. And I will look to my fellow commissioners for a motion.
Mr. Vice Chair, I would move that we accept the recommendation from county staff considering and approving the revising of Spokane County Code Section 9.55.040, paren D, paren, to require franchisees to remove redundant utility poles in county right-of-way for Spokane County Public Works Department.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion, comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes 4-0. That will now bring us to public hearing item number 4C. And looks like we are going to have a presentation from our Chief Civil Deputy, Matt Folsom.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, Board of County Commissioners. This is the public hearing in the matter of amending Spokane County Code, Chapter 6.15, Public Camping, consistent with the case law to eliminate Section 6.15080. On June 25th, 2019, the Board of County Commissioners put into effect Spokane County Code 6.15, Public Camping. Section 6.15080 was added to comply with Martin v. City of Boise, which ruled that cities cannot enforce anti-camping ordinances on public property if they do not have enough shelter beds. The code section 6.15080 reads, enforcement of this chapter shall be suspended any time that there is no space available in the homeless shelters located within Spokane County. The U.S. Supreme Court overturned Martin v. Boise in the Grants Pass v. Johnson decision. There is no longer a shelter space requirement for the enforcement of anti-camping ordinances. This proposed amendment eliminates Section 6.15080 and brings our county code into alignment with the current case law.
Are there any questions for Matt? Okay, thank you. All right, so this is a public hearing item. We do have two individuals who have signed up ahead of time to testify. Amora Lottie. Amora, if you could state your name and city of residence.
I am a resident of Spokane Spokane city limits. My name is Amora Lottie. So to start off with, I don't know, obviously this is my first time doing this. I'm a former foster youth, and something that doesn't get acknowledged in a lot of this is there's a huge pipeline from foster care to prison. There's a lot of lack of opportunity and things like that that often people are just not aware of. I think that there needs to be more acknowledgement that the group of people which are being demonized and condemned deserve the same rights and opportunities as people who have more economic opportunities from birth. I feel like there's a lot of essentially discrimination. You're saying one population deserves the right to be able to utilize parks comfortably, while the other population deserves legislation against them. I'm pretty confident that in our Constitution and in the founding principles of all of our system, there's supposed to be equal protection under the law, and I think when you prioritize one group over another, you fail to provide equal protection. I'm honestly astounded that this is happening. I'm disgusted and disappointed in the way that our Superior Court has handled that, and there is still the responsibility of us as individuals to keep an eye on that. So, at what point are we going to recognize that this is still a violation of the Constitution and still a violation of our founding ideals, and that these are human beings, that not all homeless people are drug addicts. A lot of them lack opportunity. I believe it's the Casey Foundation or something like that has identified statistics that from at least my generation, which I'm sure it hasn't changed too much, about 50% or less of foster youth graduate college or graduate high school. Less than 5% get their bachelor's degree, and you cannot find statistics on master's degrees or PhD degrees from former foster youth. I myself have gotten my master's degree while in a domestic violence shelter. My son and I have experienced homelessness. It is not a flaw in our character, it's a flaw in the system and the lack of opportunities which we have been given. So at what point is that going to be acknowledged? At what point are we going to be humanized? Because if it's a flaw in the leadership's ability to put themselves in our shoes and to humanize us, then that is the core issue, not the fact that some people are homeless. And at some point, we need to acknowledge that, or there's going to be a continued divide, continued resentment, continued anger, and this will continue to escalate. But at no point are you going to be able to say that these people don't deserve the right to live, that don't deserve the right to equal access to this space. Thank you.
Thank you. Then back to Larry Andrews.
My name's Larry Andrews. I live in Spokane and I have a business here. And I on Super Bowl Sunday, ran a half-page ad talking about what's going on here, and I believe it's 1380 that's trying to reverse what we've already voted for. And to me, to leave the people camping out when it's below zero with the wind chill at nearly 20 below zero is not humane. It's insane, insanity. It's just pure insanity. These people, they need to be taken off the street. They need to be put in a shelter, get warm, get fed, and we need to find out what their problems are. And we need to address those problems for these people. Now, I'm going to give you an example of what goes on here. At the city, they testified that over 200,000 needles were found in this area here lately, that we've been pandering the drugs. There's plenty of shelters here for people that don't want to use drugs. There's open shelters, but they have to get off the drugs, okay? And they don't want to. We had one lady camping right out in the front of our business on Madelia Street. She was hooking there. She was totally, even in the wintertime, stripping down, using a hose, and washing herself. Now, within about a half a block radius, we have kids there, okay? And here she is stripped down to nude. And so our people that we lease from, the lady went down and talked to them and said, we'd love to take you to a shelter and get warm. And you know what the lady said to this lady? She said, I like drugs. I like sticking out myself in the wintertime and staying outside. And she's using our property to do that. They're using drugs, they're selling drugs right in the neighborhoods here. And we're within that 1,000-foot limit for drugs here. And we wonder what's going on. And this isn't right. It's not humane to leave people, give them a tent or a blanket when it's zero out. I mean, these people, they got problems and they need help. They're so bad off, they don't know which end's up, okay? And we've got to reach out to these people, and we've got to bring them back to society, free them from their addiction, and get them into society where they can be a citizen that can do something for the society. Leaving them out there in tents with needles and everything else is just pandering to the situation. It's making it worse. And you can see that by what's going on. We never used to have this problem. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. See, we have one individual on Zoom, Emily Cameron.
Hi, good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Emily Cameron, President and CEO of the Downtown Spokane Partnership. We represent employers, residents, nonprofits, and hospitality businesses located in the heart of Spokane County. And while the update to the public camping ordinance before you today is specific to the unincorporated county, we recognize the impact illegal camping has in our community. That's why I'm here to share our support today for amending the county's ordinance consistent with case law and eliminate section 6.15.080. The impact of camping on public property is growing, and it will continue to require action to maintain health and safety for everyone. Obstructed sidewalks create conditions that prevent access, they impede business, and they render our public spaces impassable. What's more, illegal camping has proven to be extremely hazardous, leaving neighbors helpless as they navigate the unsanitary and dangerous conditions that can accompany them, and all too often, the intimidating behavior by individuals in or near these camps. Keeping our community safe while supporting connections to individuals out of homelessness is some of the most pressing issues, and we understand that this is an issue in every single corner of Spokane County, not just in downtown. We have policies that cannot be utilized when they're needed, and it makes it harder to help people get the help that they need. So while we appreciate the balance of updating this ordinance, we ask that you believe that you can help those who are most vulnerable while also ensuring the health and safety of everyone. That's why we encourage you to support amending the county's public camping ordinance and ensure public right-of-ways are clean and clear, and ensure that we have tools to help everyone be safe, both the housed and unhoused alike. Thank you.
Thank you. No, this is a public hearing. So I do see we have another person, but I'm going to come back to the room. Is there anybody in the room wishing to testify? Okay, we'll start with you, ma'am. Yep. We'll bounce back and forth between Zoom and here in the room. So if you could state your name and city of residence. And then
I'm
you'll have 3
Cheryl
minutes.
Brown, and I live in Spokane. I'm the Director of Operations for Joel's Helping Hands. I'm coming from both personal and professional experience. It's heartbreaking to witness how many people experiencing homelessness are treated as if their lives matter less simply because they do not have stable housing. Laws that criminalize homelessness send a devastating message. You do not belong, you and your existence is a problem. But the real issue is not the individuals, it's the severe lack of housing, resources, and services. If they have nowhere to sleep, why should they be punished for it? I'm trying to summarize this. So last night, there were no shelter beds. There was nowhere for anybody to go, right? But they'll be criminalized if they're sleeping outside. That's insane to me. And on top of that, when we push them out of these safe spaces, they go out to the woods, they disperse in areas where they're not seen, and it's not safe at all. Could you imagine staying out in the woods right now And the recent statistics about the fentanyl overdoses, that more of the people housed than the unhoused. So when you consider that, the unhoused are in these public spaces to where, as an outreach provider, I can provide Narcan, I can save their life. But if we push everybody out into the woods where we can't see them, lives are gonna be lost even more than they already are. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, online, we have Lydia. You could state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Lydia Ciccarelli. I live in Spokane County. I'm also speaking from personal and professional experience. I am an outreach service provider, but these views are my own and do not reflect those of any company or employer. My question, I would encourage this amendment because my question is, where are people supposed to go? There's no housing, there's no shelter beds, detox beds are full. There's, transitional housing is full. There are no options, and yet people are being criminalized, ticketed, arrested, warrants out for their arrest. They go to, community court, and all of these, we try and help and we try and place them, but all of these places are full, and they're still getting criminalized. They're still getting punished for something that they can't control. I have people every day asking to go to shelters. We're calling shelters. All the shelters are full. There's waiting lists for warming centers. There's nowhere for these people to go. And just like Cheryl had said, we push them out into the woods. When they're up for housing, we cannot find them. The last week when it was -3 degrees, people had created their little structures, had their tents up to try and stay alive, and they were getting moved. They're already in the cold in their structures and tents. They have to get out of those in -3 degree weather and go find somewhere else where they're going to get moved again. Moved, ticketed, all of that, and there is nowhere for these people to go. It seems as though we are focusing more on getting this issue out of sight than solving the problem. Lives are being lost. I personally have lost 4 clients in the last month, probably more that I don't know about yet, from the weather and other issues, including overdoses. Well, guess what? Opiates keep you warm. It's at a certain point, it's like, where do we draw the line? What is our goal with this problem? Like, what is our goal? Are we trying to push them out? Are we trying to assist people in dying? There's nowhere for people to go. Please amend this. That's it.
Thank you. All right, sir, come forward.
John Knowles, Spokane County Sheriff. I want to thank the board for considering this change in this code. It is helpful to law enforcement to keep codes on the book that are consistent with recognized law. I also want to speak to you briefly about the code says what it says, and we're trying to keep in compliance with recognized case law and rulings from the United States Supreme Court. Functionally, on the ground, we have directed our deputies, and that's both in the city of Spokane Valley and in Spokane County, but we'll talk specifically about the people operating in unincorporated Spokane County, because that's what this ordinance addresses. In our policy, we direct our deputies to, when they encounter people who may or may not be violating this ordinance, to do everything they can to gain compliance voluntarily and to not have to take people into custody or involve them in the justice system. They are strongly encouraged to help these people find a suitable place for them to be, get them connected to services, and to do everything they can to make sure that this isn't something that we are criminalizing, although for people who may be committing crimes, again, I think somebody earlier said, not everyone who's homeless is committing a crime, and that is certainly true. But we have to recognize that we need ordinances that give law enforcement officers tools to use when people are committing crimes. And I'm talking about crimes outside of maybe violating this county public camping ordinance. This gives us a tool. One that we don't want to have to wield if we don't have to, but it gives us a tool to use if we need to. So I support you making the change in the ordinance, and I think there are a lot of conversations we can have amongst me and the law enforcement side and you as the legislative body about how can we get stuff on the books that allows us to keep our community safe and clean, but yet doesn't victimize people for being in a tough spot. But I just wanted you guys to know that our policy is we will do everything we can to not have to use this ordinance. Frankly, we don't have many calls for public camping. Again, somebody said, well, you know, people get under the trees and they're not seen. That's certainly true. We have that happen in some of our public spaces where they're just not seen. But frankly, most of our calls about unlawful camping are on private property. Then again, that's left up to the discretion of the property owner. So realistically, I can't remember the last time we actually wrote someone a ticket in unincorporated Spokane County for public camping. But again, having the tool available to us in extreme circumstances is critical, and I thank you for that support.
Thank you, Sheriff. Anybody else online? Okay, and if you are online, if you're on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. If you're joining us by phone, please press *9 if you'd wish to testify. So anybody else in the room would like to testify? Right. Ma'am? You can state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
I'm Wendy Fishburne, 8712 East Red Oak Drive. I'm a marriage and family therapist. I'm the vice president of the East Spokane Business Association and a regular at the Homeless Coalition. So I regularly try to straddle the worlds to see what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. My private practice is in the Tapio Office Center. I was ground zero for Camp Hope. So it was really discovering when I came out, when, you know, our building had been ransacked, shattered glass, blood up and down the hall. I'm like, we're doing compassion wrong. This is, you know, we need, as therapists and mental health providers, we need to know when we're causing harm with our intention to help. So that's what got me engaged in this stuff. None of this is comfortable for me, but I think it's really important that I think we're causing harm with our good intentions, and we need to be aware of when our good intentions fail us. So the West Coast has pivoted from a housing first model. We've seen Gavin Newsom basically, you know, shut down camps. We've seen the Tenderloin shut down. We've seen recriminalization of drug use in Portland, even Seattle City Council. Everybody's now aware that allowing public camping is actually not helping our addicted friends who are living on the ground. So this camping ordinance, you know, was passed. No camping ordinance was passed by the will of 75% of Spokane. We want to protect our kids. We want to protect our parks. We want to protect our schools. And honestly, again, we want to protect our addicted friends from this lifestyle. So keeping this on the ground, like Sheriff Knoll said, is valuable and important. We need to think outside the box and look for a third place alternative. I'm also part of the group that was doing the 5 a.m. walks this week, trying to have the county commissioners work with the mayor and the city administration, because we really must work together. We have more in alignment that unites us than divides us. So I just want to encourage you guys to get in the same room together so that we can actually do good things that cause help and not harm. So please honor the will of the people, protect our addicted friends, and don't allow them to live on the ground. Thanks so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? Sir?
So my name is Danny Beard. My address 1021 West Hawthorne Road. I am on the board for the SBA, but I'm here just speaking as a person that cares about the homeless and also the businesses. So I didn't prepare to speak, didn't know I would have the opportunity to speak. Mr. Folsom, I agree with what you said there. I think that we have to help people get to a better place. We have to help people become contributing members in our society. And the reality is we're all in this room, we have compassion. But in compassion, there has to be accountability. And that is one area that we're failing in that area. We are enabling people to stay out there. And if you stay on the street, you die on the street. I am convinced from my experience that to just give a person a place to live doesn't really solve their problem. We have the mental health issues. We have the addiction issues. And we were talking about people dying. Well, we know that what my stats show is that almost one person every day dies in Spokane as a result of fentanyl. Not as a result of them necessarily in being out on the street, but they're using drugs. And so we have to figure that piece out. I am 100% in favor of us not allowing people to camp on the street. I came from New Orleans last night. I got back here in Spokane, and I was down there with my son on vacation. I saw one person camping on the street. One camping on the street. Now, some will say that's a direct result of they swept the streets because of the Super Bowl. Well, maybe, but there still was no one there. I'm on the board at Hoop Fest. Hey, did we have the streets swept when we have the largest 303 events in the city? No, people were still out there sleeping. Then we had the tournament come to Spokane, right? No. So I can't say that that was the case, but you have the ability and the power and authority to make a decision that we cannot allow people to sleep on our streets for the good of the businesses, for the good of the individuals. And there are shelter beds in Spokane. You can choose to say yes, no, or maybe so. If I say yes, I want to continue to do the drugs, you probably might have to stay out on the street. You say no, I want to get to a better place. I want to be a contributing member of society. That's the goal, right? I think we're all in the same place. True compassion, there has to be accountability. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to testify? Yep, sir.
Hello, I'm Aiden Franklin again of 1319 East Blackwood Lane on the South Hill. And I heard earlier about pushing these people out in the woods and everything. I hike through the woods almost every day to go out to Eastern, catch a bus and everything, because I don't have a car yet. And that poses a danger to people in those public spaces where they're out. I've seen people walking their dogs every day. And if they see somebody out camping, out in the woods and everything, they may not come back, and they may actually get scared and be like, hey, we're not coming back here because there's now people out camping. There was actually a little morbid, but a dead deer out there, and it kind of scared some people one day until the dead deer was hauled off. But also at the same time, jail is not a solution to homelessness. And the criminal justice system is not a solution to homelessness. It may, if you look at it, we pay, I read this statistic somewhere, that it's about $41,000 per person to put somebody in prison. I don't know what that is for the level for the jail, but that is quite expensive on our taxpayer dollars. And with the shelter beds, there could be somebody, because I keep hearing Spokane, City Limits, Spokane Valley area. But what about somebody out in Rockford? Somewhere way far away, they've just gotten kicked out, and there's not much out there. What will happen to them? Will they be told there's no shelter space in Rockford, or will they have to make the journey all the way up towards Spokane to find services. Because for a lot of people, this is their only form of government. So that's why I wanted to address the rural areas of this county. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else wishing to testify on item 4C? Anybody online? No? Second call. Third and final call for item 4C. All right, seeing no one else wishing to testify, we'll close the public hearing, and I will look to my fellow commissioners for a motion.
Mr. Vice Chair, in the matter of amending Spokane County Code, Chapter 6.15, Public Camping, consistent with the case law to eliminate Section 6.15.080 that suspended enforcement of the chapter any time that there was no space available in homeless shelters located in Spokane County. I move for approval.
I'll second for discussion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. Commissioner Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I wanted to spend a few moments speaking to this topic and thank the members of the public for their testimony. As the board is aware, this proposal is to remove language from our county code that requires Sheriff's Office deputies to check the capacity of local shelters before enforcing the anti-camping ordinance in the unincorporated areas. And as we've heard from council, such language was previously required by the Federal Court of Appeals. It's no longer required, and so now it's essentially optional. So as the testimony reflects, the issue of unlawful camping on public property or public rights of way, it can draw strong opinions, passionate perspectives from the community because it inevitably intersects with the complicated issue of homelessness. In thinking about my vote today, I just want to give a thank you to the sheriff for a well-considered enforcement strategy on this proposal. As you heard, that strategy is not about locking up homeless people. That is not the goal. Rather, the sheriff has a realistic, nuanced, and balanced enforcement strategy. It involves always putting safety first of both the individual and the public, offering to connect individuals with shelters, counseling, or services wherever possible, and seeking voluntary compliance as an alternative to arrest when it's safe to do so. Under Sheriff Ritchie further explained that to us in a briefing session, and we're really talking about a tool, one tool among a menu of options and strategies responding to this issue for officers, especially dealing with chronic situations. And so I just wanted the public to know that the Sheriff's Office, as the sheriff explained, has a specific policy that binds deputies on how they are required to interact with unhoused individuals in the field. And I just wanted to read from a few portions of that because it says a lot, and it's on page 393 of the Sheriff's Office Policy Manual. It says, quote, "The purpose of this policy is to ensure that personnel understand the needs and rights of the homeless and to establish procedures to guide deputies during all contacts with the homeless, whether consensual or for enforcement purposes. The Spokane County Sheriff's Office recognizes that members of the homeless community are often in need of special protection and services. The Spokane County Sheriff's Office will address these needs in balance with the overall missions of the office. It is the policy of the Spokane County Sheriff's Office to provide law enforcement services to all members of the community while protecting the rights, dignity, and private property of the homeless. Homelessness is not a crime, and members of this department will not use homelessness solely as a basis for detention or law enforcement action. Deputies are encouraged to contact the homeless for purposes of rendering aid, support, and for community-oriented policing purposes. Nothing in this policy is meant to dissuade a deputy from taking reasonable enforcement actions when facts support a reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. However, when encountering a homeless person who has committed a non-violent misdemeanor and continued freedom is not likely to result in a continuation of the offense or a breach of the peace, deputies are encouraged to consider long-term solutions to problems that may relate to the homelessness, such as outreach, shelter, referrals, and counseling in lieu of physical arrest. Deputies should provide homeless persons with resource and assistance information whenever it is reasonably apparent that such services may be appropriate." End quote. In other words, it is the written, binding policy of the Sheriff's Department that officers should uphold the law, keep the public safe, and when encountering individuals who may be uniquely vulnerable, to offer resources and consider voluntary appliance when safe to do so. I am comfortable supporting this policy with the responsible strategy articulated by the sheriff. Today's action does bring our code into alignment with several other large counties on the issue of unlawful camping, including, I believe, Pierce and Snohomish counties on the west side of the state. And I just want to make clear for myself, again, that I see this as just one tool for law enforcement to have at its disposal. But as I think the testimony reflects, and I think all of us up here would agree, we as a county must continue to do better to respond to homelessness crisis in a comprehensive way that works and gets results. We know that there is a shortage of affordable housing in our community, and we must continue doing more to address it. We as the board have invested millions of state and local dollars into shelters and affordable housing units. I would like to see us allow conversions of surplus properties into affordable housing as one more step that we can take. We know that neither the county nor the city, the valley, or the small towns can solve this problem on their own. We must work together with our regional partners for regional solutions wherever possible. And I want to thank Commissioners Waldrop and Kearns for continuing to be at that regional table, contributing to ongoing city-county dialogue, which is ongoing. Let's keep that going, and let's get some shared strategies moving. Spokane is a community full of compassionate people, and I also want to acknowledge there are many dedicated people working at nonprofits, schools, counseling programs who are assisting homeless individuals in finding stability. And I want to thank them for their incredible work. The chronic homelessness challenge in our community can be very visible on the streets, which rightly concerns all of us. We must do better, but we should remember there are many, many unhoused people who we don't necessarily see out on the streets every day, who are working through incredible trauma, oftentimes, and are quietly accepting help from these organizations and working towards stability in their lives. And that's the goal, as we heard earlier in the testimony, and I want to recognize that many people are getting good help and making good progress. In my previous work as an assistant attorney general, I worked with vulnerable families, many of whom were homeless and unstably housed for a time, and I saw many of them get help, stabilize, and change their lives for the better through the life-changing work of great organizations, affordable housing providers, and others, and it happens every day. And I just want to say that the fentanyl crisis has hit us really hard in Spokane County, including in the homeless community. There's no doubt. This board understands, I believe, that while lack of affordable housing is critical, unhoused people are also disproportionately at risk from behavioral health problems that can complicate their stability. And at the county, we are working hard for solutions. We have expanded sobering treatment beds with millions of dollars in opioid settlement funds provided by the state. We're growing our crisis stabilization center, where individuals in crisis can get treatment instead of jail time or hospital stays. We're providing more funds for mental health first responders. We've continued to support the behavioral health unit in the sheriff's office. We're working upstream as well with investments in kids' mental health and therapy for drug-exposed newborns. So there's more to do, but the work goes on. And I just want to observe in conclusion that the notice for today's public hearing is really narrowly focused on the issue of removing this line about shelter capacity language and not necessarily other ideas that might further address enforcement. And so to the sheriff's point, I hope we can continue to be in conversation about how implementation's going, stay in dialogue about how we can improve our strategies or our ordinance as needed. And with that, and in recognition of the balanced strategy articulated by the sheriff, I'll be supporting the motion.
Any other comments? Commissioner French?
Well, I want to yield to Ms. Waldrop. You
Commissioner Waldrop?
go ahead, and I'll finish up.
Okay. I appreciate your comments, Commissioner Jordan. I appreciate the sheriff being here. I hadn't read the policy that you have in place until Commissioner Jordan referred me to it. And I think it's an actually very well-written, nuanced policy that gives your deputies the freedom to start with first, why is this individual on public property? How can I help this individual or individuals get the shelter that they deserve to have? And so I appreciate that. I hope we can, the notice, as you said today, for today was very narrow, just removing this one sentence. I'm open to more changes in the future to this ordinance. Today we're just voting on removing this one sentence. So I hope we can continue in dialogue, Sheriff Knowles, about how it's working, what are the resources that your deputies need to further assist people to gain access to shelter. And I appreciate also Commissioner Jordan mentioning that Commissioner Kearns and I have been part of a 2-year plus dialogue with other regional elected officials, service providers, and some other folks, council members, staff at the city of Spokane. We've had a lot of dialogue, and I'm frustrated that we haven't made more progress. But personally, one of the reasons I ran for election is I'm committed to having regional funding for more housing and getting people housed faster than what we're doing today. I think we're moving in the right direction. It's too slow for me, but our staff here at the county, the staff at the City of the Valley, the staff at the City of Spokane is actually working day to day together, and that's a new thing. They're sharing information about where funds are going, where gaps can be filled. So I'm excited about that. But I would love to see, I guess where I'm hoping we go as a county is really doubling down on working with our regional partners on getting people housed as quick as possible and having different types of housing and shelter available for the different needs people have in our community. We just don't have enough, and we need to do better. Allowing camping and storage of people's personal property on public property is it's challenging and it's problematic, and it can result in escalation like we saw with Camp Hope, which was not a good situation. So, I don't have all the answers, but I will support this change today, knowing that we have a policy in place at the Sheriff's Office to not treat homeless people as criminals and to assist them. And I will be reviewing that with the sheriff. I hope that we can revisit that in the next 6 months, see how that's working to actually get people into services. In the meantime, we need to do better and just double down on the housing. So, because we can argue about these policies every day, but we need to have housing for folks, and we need to get people into housing more quickly, and that's what I'll be focused on, and that's what I've been working on, and hope that we can make some real progress in our community in the next year.
Commissioner French?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. And I also want to thank my fellow commissioners for their comments. This is a challenging issue, and over the last 4 or 5 years, I think this board has spent over, I'm glad you're all sitting down, over $100 million. $100 million to address homelessness and the mental health crisis, the drug crisis, and I think all of us are committed to trying to find a solution, much like the community is struggling to find a solution. I really appreciate the comments about we are a compassionate community, and we do want to try and take care of each other. I think a great example of that was the Gray and Oregon fires, where we came together to try and help each other. But when your compassion becomes enabling, and then you become part of the problem, that's not a solution. This community, 2 years ago, voted for Prop 1, which is about public safety. A lot of people want to say it's about homelessness. No, it's not about homelessness. It's about public safety. People did not want folks that were engaged in criminal activities near their children. I understand that. But not everybody that finds himself homeless is a criminal. You can be homeless because you've lost your job. You can be homeless because of domestic violence, because you were evicted from your house. But you can also be homeless because you're addicted to drugs, engaged in prostitution, child abuse, which unfortunately was something we saw firsthand with Camp Hope. So I can tell you that the number one housing solution for me is not our jail. Our jail is packed with criminals, people that we want to have off of the street, and people that we want to keep away from our community, keep our community safe. I'll share with you a true story. A couple years ago, I was traveling to southern Idaho, and about 1 o'clock in the morning, a deer jumped out in front of my truck down in southern Oregon, totaled out my truck, and I ended up having to pull to the side of the road, call the state trooper and call the wrecking truck to come get me. And so the wrecker had my truck on the back of his flatbed and pulling into a small town in Oregon, and didn't know me from Adam, would have no expectation that he would know me. But I struck up a conversation about how things going here in the community, and he said, well, they've really slowed down. And I said, really, what are people doing? He said, well, my best friend just lost his job, and he's going to Spokane. I said, really, Spokane? Why Spokane? And he said, oh, you can, all the free stuff they give away up in Spokane, you can live comfortably for a year, 2 years, and not have to worry when the economy turns around, he'll come back. And I said, Spokane, why wouldn't he go to Portland, or why wouldn't he go to the Tri-Cities? And he says, you can get more free stuff in Spokane than you can in any of the other communities. That's a choice. It's a choice that we subsidize with our taxpayer dollars. But that's a real story, and so that's why, you know, I look at the homeless situation, and we've got a variety of different causes. We've got folks out there that are suffering from a variety of different issues. Mental health is one of them. That's why this county was one of the first counties in the state to create a mental health crisis stabilization facility, so that we had a place to take folks that were suffering from a mental crisis to get therapy and medication, not to put them in jail. That's compassion, but it's compassion with the mission. We want to help folks that are suffering from a mental crisis. This bill merely harmonizes what we have on the books with federal law. But it doesn't change who we are. It doesn't change how we care for our fellow citizens. And I think Sheriff Knowles and the manual that Mr. Jordan quoted from reflects that. Thank you. Thank you for being a leader in an area where clearly you could take the other position, say we're just going to lock everybody up, and you've chosen not to do that. Thank you. I also want to thank my fellow Commissioner Kearns. His program, Going Home program, was his idea, and it's helped folks that have a loving family somewhere else. It helps them get there. We pay that, we fund that, so that we can help reunite people with family members and friends that will help take care of them. That's compassion. So, for all the reasons I've stated so far, I'll support the motion, but I also want to continue to be part of the dialogue as we work to try and find a solution. And just keep in mind that we don't want our compassion to become enabling to where it works to our disadvantage. Accountability, thank you, is critical. We need to hold each other accountable for our actions. We also need to hold those that are looking for help accountable for theirs. So for all of those reasons, I'll be supporting the motion. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, I think a lot has been said. I agree with just about everything that's been stated up here. I want to thank Commissioner Jordan for reading what was in the Sheriff's Policy Manual. I think that's extremely powerful to show our sheriff's commitment to service and helping folks that need help. Those sideboards in place, I think, are there for a very important reason. You know, when one of the statements that was said earlier was that sometimes we're doing compassion wrong, and I think that was a very powerful statement, because leaving folks outside in the cold is not compassionate. Commissioner Waldrop, you mentioned Camp Hope when that got out of hand. That absolutely got out of hand. That was not compassionate. That wasn't compassionate for the folks that were at Camp Hope. That wasn't compassionate for the folks around Camp Hope. You know, I do want to also highlight, I know it's been mentioned a couple of times, but I just want to make it clear, this ordinance impacts unincorporated county only. This doesn't supersede any regulations or ordinances within any of the cities. This is just unincorporated county. There's a statement made about, you know, that policies like this that in the county would push people out into the woods. The fact is that's where a lot of folks are already at in unincorporated county. This doesn't push people out of cities, because this only impacts unincorporated county, and there's a lot of folks that are already in the woods. That's where they're already at. You can talk to our parks director about what he has found on our conservation futures properties. Those are heavily wooded areas, and there are a lot of folks that are already out there. The meetings that Commissioner Waldrop and I have been attending, trying to look and see if we can implement some sort of regional approach to homelessness. A couple of months ago, we saw a graph that was presented to us that showed from July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2025, this community in tax dollars will spend a minimum of $50 million on homelessness for that biennium. That doesn't take into account any private dollars that are donated to any of our great service organizations here. None of those private, that's just tax dollars. And that doesn't even account for if there are other grants that are obtained in that time frame. That was of just a couple of months ago. So I'm gonna support this. I think this is very important. This, as stated, this brings us in line with the federal laws, with the ruling of the Supreme Court of the United States. So with that, I will call for the motion. We have a motion. I will call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. That does it for our printed agenda, so I will look down to our CEO, Scott Simmons, and our Chief Civil Deputy. Anything for the good of the record?
Thank you, Vice Chair. One executive session item pending in potential litigation under RCW 4230-110, Section 1I. No action anticipated to be taken, approximately 15 minutes. I'd like the board, county CEO, sheriff, head prosecutor, and DPA Devin Kurta.
Okay. All right, so we will sign some documents. We'll head into executive session. It is 3:24, so we'll start the executive session here probably in about 3 minutes. Again, for 15 minutes. At the conclusion of that executive session, we will adjourn for the day. So thank you all for being in attendance, and we hope to see you next week.